Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodiverse individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy. I'm a neurodiverse software developer turned startup founder building habit and focus software for people with ADHD. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I get to sleep on time to do my 3-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by FocusBear, a habit and productivity app that makes healthy habits and deep work the path of least resistance. If you have a tendency to check emails or scroll through Instagram first thing in the morning, but long to develop a meditation and exercise habit first thing, FocusBear can help you. The app blocks distractions on all your devices and guides you through your habits one at a time. Throughout the day, FocusBear assists you to stay in deep work by blocking websites and apps that are unrelated to your chosen focus mode. Life's not all about work though. You'll be prompted to take regular breaks to rest your eyes and stretch your muscles. At the end of the day, FocusBear helps you switch off. Work-related apps get hidden so you can unwind and sleep well. Check out the app by going to focusbear.io. Welcome to episode 24 of the Focus and Chill podcast. We're thrilled to be joined by nobody today. We don't have a guest, but we've got some interesting topics to talk about instead. Joey and I are going to explore the power of pause, using equipment as a crutch, writer's block, managing our email inboxes, using Pocket, and cleaning. We'll see how many of these topics we can get through. Let's start out with the first one, the power of the pause. I'll give some context here that I was in a session today for an ADHD learning program that I'm doing, and we were talking about the stress management cycle and how there's a constructive way to deal with stress and a destructive way. And the destructive way is the whole react instead of respond, that if someone says something that annoys you, then immediately say something catty back at them and burn your bridges. Don't really reflect on what it's going to do to the relationship. Whereas the constructive way is to pause when you hear something that is a little bit activating, and maybe go for a walk and reflect on what you want to say, what your goals are for the relationship, and then come back and say something very zen and very kind. And my question back to the facilitator was, okay, that sounds good in theory, but how do you actually remember to pause when the stakes are high? That they're the times where I feel that I tend to devolve and my lizard brain gets activated, and I don't necessarily act in a way that I would admire in myself. Joey had a suggestion for how to handle these kind of situations.
Yeah, so I think it's important to not train in the highest stakes environment to start off with. I think it's good to adapt your training, but when you're starting out with something like presence or trying to send back constructive responses, it probably pays to train in a low stakes environment. So I think the background behind a lot of this is probably the idea of presence and pausing and being able to zoom out. And so in terms of cultivating this practice, I think it's really good to do something pleasurable and be present with that. I think too often when we don't have to concentrate, like for example, if we get into the shower, which is a nice pleasurable activity, we can be distracted and think about other things. But it pays to use that time to actually drop into the moment, use all 5 senses, like look at the steam rising up from the shower, feel the water on your skin, hear the water coming out. I don't know if my shower has a particular smell. I should probably drop into that. But and I'm not sure if I really taste anything either. But as much as you can, you drop into the sensory experience. Or if you're eating something that you really like, that's probably a really good example, like how it tastes, how it feels in your mouth, how it smells, what it looks like, possibly like the sound of it cooking. dropping, like really being present with pleasurable experiences, and training that will help you to be present in not so pleasurable experiences. That's my whole take.
It's an interesting idea because I find that creativity is highest at times like that when I'm in the shower or I'm cooking and I'm doing something with my body and I'm not actively thinking about a certain thing.
Yes.
So when I hear that, I start thinking that you're saying that you're robbing me of my creativity if I have to do that. Do you have any thoughts on how to balance it? Is it a matter of maybe you begin with presence for a couple of minutes and then after that let your mind wander into the default mode network and have creative insights?
That's a very good point. I think you could, if you want to be really intentional about it, you could do what's called switch between convergent and divergent thinking. So in terms of convergent basically means focus. And so you go into the shower or eating your favorite food or whatever pleasurable experience it is, and you really, really focus in on that stuff. And you might say, okay, I'm going to do that for like let's say 10 mindful breaths. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to like basically count 10 breaths and feel all those pleasurable sensations. And then after that, you can say, okay, divergent mode, just going to let my mind wander now, because I think that convergent part has actually given you like a little bit of a break and has allowed you to get that presence. And then you can go into that divergent mode. And that 10 breaths is just like an arbitrary number I pulled out. You could do whatever you like, and you just play with it. So for example, after I work out and I do meditation, I specifically split it up into half. So I set it for a 10-minute meditation. I set 5 minutes as a divergent. Sorry, I go divergent first, and then I go convergent to try and bring anything that I plucked out of the ether. I try to think about, okay, so how am I actually going to use that? So that's a good point, Jeremy. Like, it's you definitely don't want to rob yourself of your creativity in those relaxed moments where your diffuse mode network is working on problems. I guess everyone's different as well. I find that I tend to get really creative solutions when I'm trying to focus on something. So yeah, I guess my best advice is to have a play around with it and see what balance works best for you.
That idea of doing the divergent thinking first, that seems to be the way that it normally operates for me. I'll go for a run, and the first 10 minutes of the run, my brain will be quite busy. And I normally keep a piece of paper in my pocket with a pencil so I can write down ideas. And then after that time, it's not necessarily a fixed amount of time, but after that, my brain seems to quiet down. And then it's easier to just be mindful and be thinking about the way that my legs are moving and enjoying the world around me as I'm running.
Yeah, that's it. And I think I'll just quickly say that I think writing things down when you've got the idea is such a powerful technique that I don't think enough people use, because it depends on what you want to do. So like, let's say you've got an idea and you think, oh, okay, I'd like to develop this more in my head while I'm running or what have you, then that's okay. But if it's like, okay, I've got this idea and I'll write it down when I get back home. Say if you're going on a run and you got this idea and you go, okay, I'll hold it in my head and I'll keep running. My understanding is that actually blocks a lot of other creative thought because of this thing called the Zeigarnik effect, which means that so basically when you have an idea, it's an open loop. And so you can close that loop by writing it down or like basically taking it out of your head, which allows your brain to come up with other ideas. Whereas if you can also use this effect to your advantage, because if you've got it in your head and you want to work on it a bit more, by not taking it out of your brain, by not offloading it, you can potentially work on it while you're running. So there's two ways of using that time to your advantage, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to working memory limits that it's still not in our long-term memory yet. So we can't really hold more than 3 things. Or they were originally saying 7 things, but I think it's been downgraded to 5 plus or minus 2.
Yeah. 5 plus or minus 2 now. Right. Yeah, excellent.
And I guess the other aspect of it that we were talking about is a martial arts analogy of that we don't rise to the level of the challenge that we fall to the level of our training.
Yeah.
At times, there are situations where a stressful situation will elevate performance, but there's a sort of a threshold. In the same learning program, they were talking about the Yerkes-Dodson law, which is a ratio between stress and performance. And it's basically a bell-shaped curve that when there's low stress, performance is low. When there's a medium amount of stress, performance is pretty high. But when there's too much stress, for at least complex tasks anyway, your performance declines completely. I guess that's when it comes into the fight or flight response. We want to be sitting more in the point where it seems important. It's more of the flow state where there's importance and it's within our level of competency and we can concentrate well on it and do a good job. But if it's too far on either to the left or the right, we're probably not going to do well.
Yeah.
Practicing more situations makes me think maybe I should practice being insulted so that I can be ready when it's not really that I get insulted at work, but more that someone might say something that is counter to the way that I want to run the project, that someone has a different idea and it feels threatening. And if I can be in a low stress state, then I won't immediately fly off the handle. But if I have already entered the meeting feeling quite triggered, then it doesn't take much to set me off.
Yeah.
Some time before the meeting and trying to get my head right is probably important.
Yeah, so many things there. Like I think it's about three things. One is that like it seems to be a lot of overlap with the concept of flow, I think, because in flow they say that you want to choose a task or choose a difficulty that matches your level of skill. And so in the same way, like if you're too stressed out, then you're not going to get into a flow state. If you're not stressed enough, or if the challenge is not high enough, you're going to feel underwhelmed and you're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to get into the flow state. And I guess like that corresponds to not getting optimal training or not getting optimal learning. I think what you're saying about the choosing low stress conversations to practice this ability of pausing is I completely sympathize with that, because my whole thing is I know when I try to be curious, but when I come across someone that I perceive as overconfident, that curiosity goes out the window, because I automatically try to show them that they're not, that like their overconfidence is unwarranted. And so I find myself being a lot less curious and a lot more interrogative, I think. Mm-hmm. I think also the third thing was that, have you heard much about like the idea of future pacing, Jez? Like where you think about, okay, well, I know I'm going into this situation where I'm possibly going to get stressed. So I'm going to this situation that I know is going to stress me out. So I can kind of prepare myself to lose my mind responsibly, if that makes sense.
So is it a little bit of a visualization exercise? I'm not familiar with the concept.
Yeah. So it's basically that idea. Yeah. So like I have this thing when I used to commute to work every day. The bus stop used to be really busy and people used to cut in line. And me, like I really don't like it when people cut in line. I'm all for transit justice. So it was a guarantee that I was going to get annoyed in the mornings when I'm going to the bus. So it was basically the idea of like saying, you know what, I'm going to probably get to the bus line and someone's probably going to cut in, and I'm going to make this an opportunity to practice like stoicism. Basically, is there something that I can do about this? Well, I could tell them off, but is that going to make much of a difference? No. So I'm going to choose not to tell them off. I'm just going to accept it. I'm just going to accept this is the way the world is. Sometimes there's people that will cut in line. It's just like the weather. Can't change it. And so it is future pacing. It's a bit of visualization.
Similar to the Marcus Aurelius quote then.
Yes,
yourself each morning. Today you will meet people who are meddlesome, ungrateful, and line
that's the one.
cutting.
And line cutting, that's it. That's it.
Let's move on to the second point, which was around using equipment. And this one, it was sparked by a LinkedIn post that Joey commented on, which had this really cool video of children in a classroom. I can't remember which country. Was it Thailand or China, somewhere like that? And it's time for their meditation break. And they all get their chairs out in transformer mode. And normally they're upright chairs, and suddenly they recline back at 45 degrees. And
Yes.
they're able to get into a nice meditation pose. And a lot of people were liking this post and saying, oh, they should do this in every school. And Joey, your comment was, but this might give us the perception that we need this special chair in order to be able to meditate. You want to elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so I think what I've noticed in having conversations with people about meditation is that they think there's a right way to do it. And while, yeah, there is some fine tuning that can happen to get the most out of your practice. The thing is that a lot of people try to get perfect from the outset, and it stops them from starting. And so, yeah, it's one of those, like, the perfect being the enemy of the good type things. And so if people think that they need to sit in a perfect lotus position in order to meditate, and they can't do that, and that stops them from meditating, then it's one of those things where, and I'm not even sure if you need to sit in a lotus position. I don't think I've ever done that before. I just sit cross-legged on the mat.
So cross-legged, my hip flexors start getting sore.
Oh, geez. Yeah. So I think I'm not a meditation expert, but I guess the thing that I'd love for people to take away is that you can be mindful in any position, and that is ultimately the end goal of having a meditation practice. You sit on the mat, or you sit down, or you hang upside down, or you walk around and you meditate. And the idea is that you carry that practice into your everyday life. A bit like what we were saying with taking a shower or eating something pleasurable. In essence, what you're doing by engaging all 5 of your senses is you're being mindful. So you can almost turn that into a meditation practice. And a lot of meditation teachers will probably be like face palming as I say that, but it's one of those things where you're ultimately doing this very intentional meditation practice so you can bring mindfulness into your everyday life. And so if you start tying it to needing certain tools, or needing to get into a certain position, or needing to do it at a certain time of day, well, those are all good for habit forming. There shouldn't be crutches that stop you from carrying the practice into all the other parts of your life, so that if you are having a stressful conversation with someone, you can bring that meditation that you had on the mat, or wherever you do your meditation practice, you can bring that mindfulness into that situation.
Yeah, it makes me think about state dependence, that there can be a situation where maybe you always have a cup of coffee before you start studying or start working. Yes. And then you feel that without that cup of coffee, my cup of chamomile tea, I'm not going to be able to focus. I'm not going to be able to meditate. And there may be some argument to it that there can be performance enhancing traits from certain things that you consume or certain environments. But I guess the key thing is to not have it be something that you're dependent on, that you can still meditate or you can still focus without those things around you. It makes me wonder about mixing it up a bit.
Yes.
Doing it sometimes without the additional equipment and sometimes with.
That's it. Yeah. I think it depends on how mature the routine is. So I feel like when I'm working with someone to create a habit in their routine, I will often say, try to slot this into a routine that you already have. So for instance, right after you make your cup of tea, like you're boiling the water, think about like actually sitting down and writing that cold email, or writing that first sentence of your story, or whatever the habit is that you want to install. Have your cup of tea, sit down, start writing. That's the sequence. But then as people start to get more mature with that habit, if I see that they're getting more and more comfortable with it, I'll actually start saying, okay, well, play around with where that habit is in the sequence, or maybe try it like don't so you make the cup of tea, instead maybe exercise after that, and then do the habit after the exercising. So yeah, like I think it's great to mix it up, so you don't feel like it's a crutch. Like, for example, you don't feel like if you're out of coffee, then you can't start writing, or you can't do your cold email. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. But I think that there's a middle way here, like many things, that I don't think what we're saying is don't use crutches at all.
Yes.
We're saying that they can be helpful, but they're not important. They're not crucial. For example,
Yes.
I'm looking at getting a wearable device to help with breath work. It's this belt that you put around you, and it can detect whether you're breathing diaphragmatically. And it can also tell, it's meant to be able to tell if you're working and then you start doing more chest breathing, which might indicate anxiety. Something that I'm quite interested in, because I often don't feel particularly aware of my breathing, that I can get into a state where I don't have any interoception. And part of me is thinking this could be the silver bullet, that I'll now be able to tell when I'm drifting into anxiety. But
yes,
I'm also thinking about it that these kind of devices often actually don't work all the time. They might not be reliable, or if I'm traveling, and that can often be a stressful situation, I probably wouldn't bring it. So ideally, I'll be able to have that same state of mind, even if I don't have this special belt.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd probably say that the takeaway is that can use crutches, can use training wheels to start out with, and then as you get more and more comfortable with the habit, you can start taking the training wheels off, seeing how you ride without them, and adding. You can always add them back in if you need to. And yeah, I think that's the takeaway. Use the crutches and the training wheels to start out, and then when you feel more comfortable with them, see how you go without them. And yeah.
Hello there, this is Joey. I'm excited to tell you about a project I run where I help imaginative people just like you breathe life into their creative dreams, like writing that book or performing that stand-up comedy set. I know the first step can be daunting. I've been there many times and have helped many people on a similar journey. If you've wondered how to bring those ideas swimming around in your head to life, get in touch. We'll shrink the intimidating dragon of a goal into a cute little lizard of an achievable daily habit that you can do every day to get started and stay moving. Click on the link in the show description to get in touch.
You mentioned writing cold emails, I think was the context. Our next topic was around writer's block. You've been creating some content around that recently on LinkedIn. Do you want to distill your biggest tips around getting out of creativity blocks?
Yeah, sure thing. One of my favorite topics. So I think there's two things. One thing is people tend to put too much pressure on themselves to carve out a long period of creative time. And so one of the things that my clients often come to me and they say like, okay, so I want to do X project. I want to write a book. I want to develop the sale, like a sales strategy, or I want to, like all different creative things. They'll come to me and they'll say, but I don't have an hour in my day to cultivate this. And I say, well, don't use an hour. Use 5 minutes. And so the idea is that creativity doesn't need to happen in a large block where you can just sit and like look out the window and just like let your mind wander. Creative thoughts can happen during that time, but if you have a set 5 minutes every day where you just like say, okay, I'm just going to write a sentence. It doesn't have to be a good sentence, because like the bottom line is, you write enough bad sentences, you're going to come across a good sentence, right? You write no sentences, you're not going to come across a good sentence. And so that's the one thing, which is I think people feel they feel like they need a long block of time to be creative. And I can tell you that that's not the case. You're more likely to be creative if you, instead of trying to carve out one block of time every like every month or something, you're better off going for like 5 minutes every day. And so That's the one thing. And the other thing is too many people tried to create from a blank page, and that is playing the game on hard mode. I think we all have ideas, and much like what you were saying before, Jez, with like going running and then taking a notepad with you so you can write stuff down, and then that frees up your brain to think about other things. Not enough people do that, and I think a lot of people. I think it's an underrated skill or underrated practice to carry around something with you where you can just park your ideas without like needing to refine them or sort them. Just like vomit the idea somewhere, and you can let your future self clean it up and refine it later on. And then you write from a sense of abundance rather than from a sense of scarcity. So if there's one thing that connects both of those points, it's that people put too much pressure on their creative time, and so they come into like they wait, and then suddenly this like this. I was trying to think of like some mythical beast that comes across every so often. Like I was gonna some kind of whale or something. What's it? Sorry.
Halley's Comet comes every 65 years.
Halley's Comet. I love it. So Halley's Comet comes around and they're like going, shit, this is a time. I gotta create. And then they come there, like that, they come to their page, it's blank, but they got all this time to work on it. And like at the end of the day, they feel really bad about themselves because Halley's Comet has come around and they have not taken advantage of it. Whereas I'm saying, what's a smaller version of Halley's Comet? I don't know. Halley's Pebble. What was that?
The sun.
The sun. Isn't that a bigger version of Halley's Comet? Well, let's call it Halley's Pebble anyway. So like make it like try and take advantage of Halley's Pebble every day. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm not getting choked up. I just
it's an emotional topic.
It's just creativity is so important to me. No, it's yeah. So I'd probably say instead of waiting for like this chunk of time that happens intermittently, you don't really know when it's going to happen.
Yeah, like a public holiday, for example, that finally I have 4 hours to write my book.
Exactly. Yeah. And while I'm a big fan of that, idea because it gets some perfectionism out of the way, because it's just like saying, okay, I'm just going to sit down, I'm going to write. I would also say that it's going to be difficult to do that if you haven't already gotten into the mode of just writing every day and overcoming that perfectionism. Because like it's a muscle. You gotta get into that expressive mode, the creative mode, and it's almost like saying, okay, like this public holiday, I'm going to run a marathon. I'm just going to run for 24 hours. It's like you're gonna injure yourself, and if you haven't been running like before, and so yeah, that's basically what those posts boil down to. Yeah.
The point around the structure side of it is really interesting, because I found I'm working on a book and I've been coached by Joey and I'm doing my 10 minutes every day. I'm up to 17,000 words now, and it's felt quite easy doing a bit each day. But the part that is sometimes challenging is when I finish a section, then it's hard to figure out what do I do next, because normally it's a bit like Oscar Wilde or someone like that said that they always finish their writing practice by leaving a sentence unfinished. And that's essentially what happens to me, because I have Focus Bear with 10 minutes and then it'll cut me off at a random time. And I often haven't actually finished the sentence, or definitely not the paragraph. And it's easy to come back and continue from where I was up to before. But then when I finish a whole section, then it feels like it requires a different type of brain in order to actually reflect on where am I going next with this. So there's almost 2 types of creativity. There's the scaffolding type where I'm thinking about what is the overall structure of this project. Yeah. And then the part where it's just executing. I don't think that's just writing either. I think it can be, say, with programming, that if I've got an app that I want to build, it can feel impossible if I've got this massive project to do. But if I break it down into very small tasks, then it's pretty easy. Each of them maybe only takes 10 minutes to do. And it's easy to convince myself to work on something for 10 minutes. but working on something for 2 weeks straight feels impossible.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to breaking things down into smaller tasks, right? So you have little milestones over those 2 weeks. I guess in terms of the idea that it's easier to pick up in the middle of a unfinished sentence than it is to start something. 100%. Like agree with that. It's because you've already got the momentum with the unfinished sentence, right? Yeah, I'd probably say the way around it is just to perhaps when you come to the end of that that sentence in your like little focus pair session. So like, let's say it hasn't cut you off yet and you finished the section. Why not just keep writing into the next section? Like just use that momentum that you've actually got in that session. And you just like start like going, okay, section 2, then like section 3, and then focus pair cuts you off mid-sentence, section 3.
Yeah, it's more that it feels like a different way of thinking, that the flow of writing, and then it's
switching the mode is tough.
Yeah. It's like switching between writing and editing is hard, and switching between writing and structuring. And I think the other thing that is often a problem with writer's block is the temptation to do research.
Yes.
And one thing I read a very long time ago was the concept of when you think that you need a citation or you need to look something up, rather than actually interrupting the writing process and going and looking it up, put a placeholder.
Yes.
This book recommended putting QQQ, and that's something that I've adopted, that
nice.
Go through, and when I'm writing, I'll either highlight it in yellow and also put QQQ, and then it's easy to do find and replace later, that when I'm up to the editing stage, or if I'm feeling like my brain isn't capable of doing any writing in that session, instead I can look at all the QQQs and think about going back and doing some research to pad it out. But if I switch between the two, if I start writing and then I think I need to look this up, then it's not going to be very effective. I'm going to do neither of those things well.
Yes. Yeah, agreed.
All right, we've got time for one more topic before we close out, which is around managing emails. I've had a bit of a struggle with that for a long time, but it's something where I've used various strategies. I have used in Gmail different stars in order to reference whether an email needs to take action. And now you can snooze an email, which I found pretty helpful. But I still have an overall philosophical challenge with it, or a psychological challenge, which is that new emails seem fun and old emails that I've flagged don't seem fun. And I gravitate towards the new ones because there's that dopamine hit of, oh, what's going to be in this email? There could be something important and urgent in there. Whereas I know that the ones further down the line, they are probably going to involve work. And
yeah.
How do you deal with your inbox?
I use filters quite a lot. So, for example, I get quite a lot of incoming from different newsletters and different subscriptions, because I just love like just reading different random stuff, as subscribers of my newsletter might know. But I take a lot of that incoming stuff and I use Gmail and I put it into a label called review. And the idea is every week I will go through and I'll review like the stuff that has gone in there. So this will mostly be stuff that won't need action on it, because they're just like interesting things to read. Occasionally I will miss something that needs actioning. Like, for example, I get like the 80,000 hours newsletter going in there, and they might have like a job opening or something that might sound interesting, or different, or there might be some limited time promotions or something that I might have otherwise been interested in. But generally speaking, it's not too bad. And one of the things I've found as well, and this was not by design, but it's a happy accident, I've actually fallen behind on reviewing this stuff. So I'm currently in around August 2022 at the moment. So I'm a good couple of almost a year behind. But the very interesting thing is that it's shown me how like a lot of the stuff that comes through doesn't really matter, because there's a lot of these stories that were like hot topics at the time, but then inevitably like 3-4 weeks later they don't matter anymore. And so it has really showed me how little value some stuff is, and to really, hopefully when I get back up to date, like trailing only by a week or two behind, hopefully I'll bring that through as that discipline through, to basically say like, is this really going to matter 3 or 4 weeks from now? And if not, like, don't bother with it. Just try and stick more towards the more unsexy, timeless stuff.
Yeah, it probably is a overall principle for many things in media. News, daily headlines, they don't have a very long shelf life.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
I was going to ask you about Pocket as well, and it seems quite relevant for this. So with the review label, do you read them immediately, or do you then go through and decide which ones make it into your Pocket list?
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much everything I want. So I'll go through the different emails, and then I'll just like open them in a new tab, and basically, everything that gets opened in a new tab gets put into Pocket. And then I will, at the end, like once I've gone through about a week's worth of stuff, I'm actually trying to make it a week and a half now, so that I can gradually like get to the end of or get to a back up to date. But so generally add everything to Pocket, and then at the end of the session, I will go through and label things as high, as in high priority, and that will make it basically into my shortlist. Those are the things that will get read first. Yeah. Okay. How about you? How do you use Pocket? Do you still use it?
I have started using it again. I'm far worse than August 2022. I think I'm still going through items literally from maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I've now added it as a Monday, Wednesday, Friday habit that I'll spend 6 minutes reading through Pocket. And it's okay. Some of the things, they are no longer relevant. Some of them, the website has actually died in that time.
Yes. Yeah.
One of the challenges, I think, of going directly from the email newsletter, that they'll have a link that is a redirection link rather than going directly to where the external link would be. And sometimes those redirection services are dead by the time I get to them in Pocket.
Or sometimes they're using a service like ConvertKit or something, and they might be using like the free version, and I think that allows them only a certain like sliding window. So like you go and you click on it, and it goes, sorry, no tracking link. And I'm like going, what does that mean? I just want to look at a website. But you can always get around that by just trying to look at the title or whatever you're clicking on. I was going to say, Jez, with Pocket, I'm pretty bad as well. Like I'll add things to Pocket and I'll label things as high. But in terms of things that are like, I probably have articles in there that are at least a year or two old. And so I used to go through this practice of saying, okay, so if I add 10 items in, then I got to delete 10 items. I think when I was being really strict at one stage, I was basically saying for every one item that comes in, delete 2 items. And then I lost that discipline because I'm lazy in some things. But yeah, I find that that's pretty good as well for managing the information flow. I did that with my podcast backlog. I was at 280 things on my playlist at the beginning of autumn, and I got that down to about 105, 103 by the end of autumn. So I was pretty happy with that. And when you got a smaller backlog like that, it's a lot easier to determine what's important and what's not. Otherwise, everything just gets like lost. Yeah,
for sure. I haven't been adding as much into Pocket recently. I think I've stopped subscribing to newsletters.
Oh, okay.
I'm more reading books at the moment, and I'm not really listening to podcasts anymore either.
Oh, interesting.
I don't know.
How do you feel? Oh, sorry, go on.
Are you saying I'm a hypocrite? I'm producing a podcast but not listening to them?
No, not at all. And I really appreciate that you subscribe to my newsletter. It looks like you are still subscribed last time I checked, so thank you. But Yeah, I've thought about that as well, because I find that a lot of my media consumption is podcasts and articles that are free, but I've also got audiobooks that I've paid for, and I've also got Blinkist that I've paid for, and the consumption time, the relative consumption time for those is actually quite low. So it's probably like about 25% for the paid services, 75% for the unpaid services. I was like thinking to myself, does that really make sense? It's not like if I switched it around that I'd lose, like that I'd run out of stuff with the paid services, because there's a lot of stuff in there. So yeah, I've been thinking to myself, like, should I be switching it around, or yeah? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know whether it's necessarily free versus paid, but maybe long form versus short form, and the quality of the content, it may be higher if it's a book, because it's probably gone through some form of editorial review.
That's right.
Whereas
Yeah.
podcasts are just stream of consciousness, some degree of structure, and the same thing with blog posts.
Yeah.
Something to play around with. I'm more doing paper books at the moment rather than Kindle.
Nice.
Primarily because I can't find my Kindle after moving out.
It's a good forcing function.
Yeah. But that's been helpful, hearing about how you manage the newsletters, because I do have some things that I put a yellow star on it if it's something that I want to read, but it's still in the same inbox. I should probably actually not star it. I should just label it and move it into a folder then in Gmail if none of it is urgent, or just even the high priority with Pocket. That would be a good thing for me to do, because I don't have any hierarchy of content in there right now.
Yeah. At one stage, I was using an ultra high tag as well when my high list got too long as well.
Love it. That's like my Trello board. I've got important, super important, critical, urgent, super urgent, must do today.
Are those different boards, or are they labels on the same board?
They're columns in the same board.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Good one.
And the final thing around emails, I've been experimenting with the Simple Human Chrome extension. People have raved about Superhuman, but I didn't quite want to pay $30 per month for it.
Yeah.
Simple Human has some of the same benefits, where it basically teaches you how to do keyboard shortcuts in Gmail.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it actually saves that much time, but there is something nice about being able to quickly go from one email to the next one and being able to snooze it. It probably only saves me about 30 seconds per email review session, but it does make it a bit more fun.
Yeah. I think there's a certain level of like nerd cred that comes with it as well, right? Like just being able to like know like what keyboard shortcut does what. Whereas like maybe not nerd cred, but like just power. You feel like a power user, and Whereas other people are just like using their mouse and just like. I totally. That really resonates. I think there's another service that was like it made keyboard shortcuts into a martial art or something, and you go up the belts. Is that Superhuman?
I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
I've seen that especially for Vim.
For Vim it would be especially useful. But they also had it for Gmail. They also had it for Sublime, I think. I'm not affiliated with them, but I thought it was a pretty interesting business model. Like they give you like a certain number of classes for free, and then you pay a subscription. I think that's the only thing that stopped me was just like, learning keyboard shortcuts probably isn't high on my priority list at the moment. Even if it is just a little bit a day, I just have a lot of a little bit a day things at the moment, and I don't want to lose momentum with those. So yeah, that's in the end, that's the only reason I didn't go through with it.
Is it integrated into the editor or the email client, or is it a separate website?
As far as I could tell, it's a separate website. Yeah.
Okay. Because what I like about Simple Human is that it's actually part of Gmail, that if I click on something, then it'll say, hey, next time you can press B in order to snooze it. Or you can, compared to having to have it as a separate part of your memory that in a completely separate environment. You're learning, okay, if I want to snooze an email, I do S.
No, that's cool. So you're currently
I
using
got
it?
those keyboard shortcuts wrong. I know either snooze or something else. I know R is reply.
O is open. U is back to the list, I think. Or is that Jira? I can't remember. But I remember like J and K are to go backwards and forwards through emails. L is for label, I think. Yeah. So you're currently using it?
Yeah, and I like that as an overall philosophy of having the training at the point of performance.
Yes.
Whereas if it's in a completely separate environment, I don't know that it transfers as well.
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. Yeah. And is it a paid thing, or is it a free freemium?
I do have some concerns about it because it wants access to the whole of my Gmail, and I don't understand why it needs that, because it could actually just integrate in via Chrome extension based on the page. But I hope they're good. I hope they're not doing dodgy stuff. I think they're part of the community, a group of indie hackers. So I trust them for that reason.
If anyone from Superhuman is listening, let us know in the comments. Are you doing dodgy stuff?
Simple Human, Superhuman.
Simple Human.
Yeah.
Simple Human or Superhuman.
Yeah. All right. Well, I wish I knew the keyboard shortcut to stop recording, because I think we're at the end of our time. Thanks a lot, Joey. It's been great talking with you and Nobody.
Yeah. It's been great talking with you and Nobody as well, Jez.
We'll be back next week with a guest episode. In the meantime, stay focused, stay chilled.
Woo!
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.